Professor at Georgetown University and Republican strategist. Also with us, David Goodfriend, former Deputy Staff Secretary for President Bill Clinton. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the footage in question from Rick Tyler's dismissal from the Cruz campaign. It was posted on the Daily Pennsylvania website on Saturday under the headline, Marco Rubio has awkward confrontation with Rafael Cruz, Cruz staffer in hotel lobby. This was in South Carolina. The Daily Pennsylvania is the student newspaper of the University of Pennsylvania, and they reported that Rubio said to the staffer who was reading the Bible that the good book did not have many answers in it. But that's not, of course, what Rubio said. Apparently, he either said something in jest or that the Bible has all the answers in it. Rick Tyler then posted that Daily Pennsylvanian story on Facebook and Twitter. All right, so that's what got him in trouble. But are you guys buying into this theory from Joe Scarborough that Rick Tyler's firing is just an ugly exclamation point on the end of Ted Cruz's failed presidential campaign? First to you, Bradley.
Well, look, it's not going well, that's for sure. Look what happened in Iowa. There was a dust-up there regarding the trustability of Ted. And remember, Ted, his motto is, trust Ted. And one thing you got to give Donald Trump, he knows how to exploit a situation, and nobody does it better than him. And so he's taking down the trust factor in Ted's own motto. And I think it's a really smart move. I think it's been very effective, but I don't think Ted is any way out of this. And I think that Joe is a little premature. There's a long way to go here on the Republican side before people are going to drop out. Certainly not before probably Super Tuesday.
David, do you think this may be just a sign of desperation that Ted Cruz had to do something? There had to be some kind of fallout?
Far be it from me as a Bill Clinton man to talk about the firing of staff as some sort of death knell. Bill Clinton did it all the time. Somebody wasn't working out, he'd fire him and get somebody else. And frankly, I don't think that's a bad thing. If you're in charge, it can be a good thing. It keeps people on their toes and you either produce or you're out. And also, let's face it, staff people have to take the fall for the principal. It happens all the time. I'm not saying that it's good or bad. It's just a fact of life. When you're a staff person and something goes wrong and your fingerprints are on it, you may have to take the fall for the candidate. That's just life. But I do think, and I just want to say to my friend Brad Blakeman here, I agree that it seems premature to be reading the obituaries of Ted Cruz right now. I think Donald Trump's attacks on Cruz reveal that Trump views him as a real threat. Otherwise, why would he bother? I think that he's Trump. And let's not forget, there was this bromance between Trump and Cruz early in the campaign where they appeared at the Capitol together. They see each other, I think, as birds of a feather going after similar votes.
I see something totally different, David. I see this as Donald Trump taking the opportunity to put his boot on Ted Cruz's neck right now and take him out of the race, knowing that if Cruz does drop out, a lot of his supporters very well may go to Donald Trump.
Yeah, but it's not just Trump that's been attacking Ted Cruz. Carson has attacked Ted Cruz.
Rubio,
so
too.
is Rubio. So when you have three of the candidates saying you're being deceptive, two of them calling him a liar, I think that's going to start to stick in the minds of voters. Well, here's a statement from Rubio spokesperson Alex Conant. He says Rick is a really good spokesperson who had the unenviable task of working for a candidate willing to do or say anything to get elected. There is a culture in the Cruz campaign from top to bottom that no lie is too big and no trick too dirty. Rick did the right thing by apologizing to Marco. It's high time for Ted Cruz to do the right thing and stop the lies.
Speaking of exploiting the situation, you guys both have a lot of experience in politics. From a scale of 1 to 10, what score would you give Conant for that type of response? Go ahead, David.
Well, I think what we just heard, this unenviable position of having to stick up for Ted Cruz, it may be that that's the next job this guy gets, is working for Marco Rubio. Wouldn't that be the ultimate in one-upsmanship? But I think at base, again, we have this issue, as Brad said, of whether or not Ted Cruz can live up to his own mantra of being trusted. And here we have Trump going after that in its entirety. I, for one, am really curious about how Super Tuesday plays out on both sides. I kind of feel like this is the first time that instead of having retail politics at work, it's mass media politics at work in multiple states at the same time.
Parachute politics.
Parachute in and get out. The same power frankly, the staying power of Ted Cruz will be put to the test on March 1st and throughout the month of March, and we'll have a lot more to say about him at that point.
Brad, who do you think has the better shot tonight, Rubio or Cruz?
Well, I think Marco has to come in a strong second tonight. He needs to upset Ted Cruz. There's no doubt about it. The fact that Marco's leaving the state, though, he's already left the state, tells me there's maybe a little bit more that he knows that we don't from his internal polling. But I would say tonight is Marco's to come in second. If Ted Cruz, after all this barrage, comes in a strong second to Trump, I think that shows that there's a little bit of premature decision-making going around as to whether or not Cruz should stick around. Tonight's going to be very interesting to watch for second place, not first.
That's another story of this election season so far,
Right.
the race for second.
Brad, David, stick around. We still have plenty to talk about, and we want to remind all of our viewers to stay tuned to Newsmax TV all night long. We're going to bring you live results of the Nevada caucus starting at 9 o'clock Eastern time tonight. You don't want to miss it. Coming up next on Newsmax Now, be careful what you say. It could come back to haunt you. And nowhere is that more true than in politics, right, John? Up next, sometimes we'll show you why Republicans want you to see this video of a young Joe Biden and how it relates to the Supreme Court. Plus, it's been 25 years since U.S. forces made their way into Kuwait, putting an end to Iraqi occupation. Join us for a look back at the events that led up to this American moment when Newsmax Now returns. And we want to remind you to weigh in. What do you think about the president wanting to close Gitmo? Is it the right thing to do?
As senators, it leaves us with a choice. Will we allow the people to continue deciding who will nominate the next justice, or will we empower a lame duck president to make that decision on his way out the door instead?
It's disappointing that the senator from Kentucky takes his marching orders from extremists like Donald Trump. It's a pretty stark change from what Senator McConnell used to believe. He used to loathe this radical Tea Party faction of the Republican Party.
You just heard Senate leaders Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid clashing over President Obama's plan to nominate a Supreme Court justice to replace Antonin Scalia. That's where we'd like to welcome back our roundtable.
And joining us for part two, Bradley Blakeman, Republican strategist and professor at Georgetown University. Also back with us, David Goodfriend, former staffer to President Bill Clinton. Thanks for sticking around, guys.
Let's go back in time and take a look at this 1992 Senate floor speech showing then Senator Joe Biden urging President George H.W. Bush to wait to fill any Supreme Court vacancies until after the presidential election.
It is my view that if a Supreme Court justice resigns tomorrow or within the next several weeks, or resigns at the end of the summer, President Bush should consider following the practice of a majority of his predecessors and not name a nominee until after the November election is completed.
Yesterday, Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley says Biden understands deep down why Republicans don't want to confirm a SCOTUS nominee during the president's final year. Under the so-called Biden rules, Grassley says the president should wait to name a replacement until after the election, and the Judiciary Committee should seriously consider not giving any hearings until after the November election.
Bradley, let me ask you this question. If we flash forward to November 2016, Donald Trump has won the presidential nomination. Do you see Mitch McConnell begging President Obama to put forth a nominee with Donald Trump threatening to nominate his sister to the bench?
No, but let me say this. President Obama, as Senator Obama, was wrong when he was entrenched in not allowing the president to put forth or advancing that the president not put forth a nominee like Alito. And then we have Joe Biden, again, being entrenched. Now, what the Senate is doing now, they're fighting battles of decades ago.
Right.
You did this to me 10 years ago, so now we're going to do this to you now. And it's the same players, and that's the problem. And as far as a Republican is concerned, I respectfully disagree. I think the president has the obligation and would be derelict in his duties if he didn't put forth a nominee. And I think the Senate should wait and see who the nominee is and then give that person the respect of vetting, of hearing, and of a vote.
Brad, you're not alone.
It's
you're
you,
not alone.
It's you and me and Kathleen Parker. I think we're the only ones who are fighting this battle.
Well, Senators Mark Kirk and Susan Collins are the first to break away from the Republican Party on this issue. They both say, as you just said, Brad, it's the president's responsibility to nominate a justice, while it's the Senate's duty to either confirm or deny the nominee. David, do you think more Republicans will follow suit?
Yeah, I think the Republicans in the Senate are in a really terrible vice right now because they do have the right wing of the party saying, don't budge, as Donald Trump said in a debate, delay, delay, delay. But on the other hand, if Mitch McConnell and the Republicans want to keep their majority in the Senate, they have some very vulnerable incumbents right now in Wisconsin, in Illinois, in Pennsylvania, maybe in Missouri as well. This is middle America where people really take fairness and process seriously. And if those Republicans are tainted with the brush of a McConnell obstructionist, McConnell is not polling very well right now. I think it's going to hurt the Republicans' ability to keep the Senate majority. So McConnell is kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. That is not a fun position to be in right now.
He's locked in a bunker mentality of self-preservation right now. There are a lot of those Tea Party activists that want his job. They want to take him out just like they took out Eric Cantor. So I think he's involved in self-preservation. But they're playing the short game when the long game is really the one they should be thinking about. Brad, you hit it right on the head. The Democrats' reason can't be used by Republicans for the same purpose years later.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense at all.
And then it just continues and continues.
And there's a long history of the rule of unintended consequences coming back to haunt people who nominate Supreme Court justices. You can think about David Souter. You can think about, there's a long list. A whole bunch of them.
Earl Warren. Eisenhower called Earl Warren his worst decision ever, and Warren led to the 9-0
Sandra Day
decision.
O'Connor. There's a long list. There is a long list for sure. This is how the system's supposed to work, right? If President Obama wants to see his legacy preserved, he's going to have to put forth, the onus is on him to put forth a nominee that the Republican Senate can actually confirm.
Right, and I don't understand the whole lame duck president. I mean, at what point? When you only have 4 months, 3 months? Who sets the time limit of when you can no longer make decisions?
Well, if I can jump in,
Go ahead, David.
Jump in on that one. You can call
the time limit. The time limit has been set by the Constitution. The president.
That's right. His term.
January 20th of 2017. And look, why in the world would you ever ask somebody to do something you yourself wouldn't do? Isn't that common sense?
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to hear the outrage of the American people at this do-nothing, obstructionist government we have now, both on the Republican and Democratic sides. They've had enough.
They have.
Yeah, they have. Clearly, we're seeing that with this election. Brad, David, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to have you. Still to come, 25 years ago today, U.S. forces pushed their way into Kuwait, putting an end to Iraqi occupation. Join us for this American Moment.